Hey guys, before you did your standards mastery today, we wanted to go through this iReady lesson quiz together. It only has 4 problems. You have your sheet printed out if possible. If not, you should be working on loose leaf. Anything that you write down or do with us right here, you'll be able to use on your standards mastery. So it's a good idea to get this down. I don't want to waste any of your time, so let's just get started with number 1. It says Carlos buys 4 1/3 pounds of oranges. He uses 3/4 of the oranges in a recipe. Which of the following expressions can be used to find the number of pounds of oranges that Carlos uses? And you're circling all the answers that are correct. So again, we see that he has 4 1/3 pounds of oranges, and he uses 3/4 of those oranges in the recipe. So in this problem, what we're doing is we are finding 3/4 of 4 1/3, that part of the part, which means we're doing 3/4 times 4 1/3. All right, let's think about all the ways we can solve this. First of all, we know that when you multiply fractions, they have to be in A over B form. So 3/4 would stay 3/4 times, if I take 3 times 4, that is 12. And I add 1, that is 13 over 3. So we know that 3/4 times 13 over 3 is what you're actually solving for this problem. All right, so if I look at my options, let's start with option number 1, which is A. It shows that what they would do is 3 times 13 on the top, which is what you actually do right here in this problem, 3 times 13, and 4 times 3 on the bottom, which is actually what you do on the bottom here, so 4 times 3. So to solve this problem, you would get that answer. This works out perfectly. So A is a choice. Looking at B, it says 3/4 times 4/3. And I get why they would think that, because some people think that if you take 4/3, 4 times 1 is 4, and then that's 4 over 3. But we know that that's not the case. To change this to an improper fraction, you actually have to use this process where you multiply and then add. So B does not work because it's really not 3/4 times 4/3. 4/3 is 1 1/3, not the same as 4/3, 4 1/3. So B is not an option. If I look at C, this says 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 3/4 plus 1/3. If you look at this, it has 3 3/4. In this problem, we aren't going to have 3 3/4. We would actually need 4 of them. So that problem doesn't work as well. And then when we look at D, we have 3/4 times 4 and 3/4 times 3. So this is actually where we're going to have something new in this problem. When you're solving 3/4 times 4 1/3, another thing you can actually use is the distributive property. Now, we would have learned this if we weren't virtually learning. So this is something new that you would have learned. Multiplying mixed numbers times just a fraction or a whole number. So we know that 4 1/3 is 4 plus 1/3. Okay, that together makes 4 1/3. And you're multiplying that whole thing, that's why it's in parentheses, by 3/4. Now, when we learned the distributive property earlier this year, we knew that you took what was outside the parentheses and gave it to everything inside the parentheses. So this would be 3/4 times 4. You could write it like that, 3/4 times 4. And then there's a plus in the middle, so we would put a plus right here. And then you have to distribute to everything in the parentheses, so then that would be 3/4 times 1/3. 3/4 times 1/3. And if you look at choice D, that is actually what choice D says. That is solving this problem using the distributive property. So D is an option for the problem. Okay? Let's take a look at number 2. We had problems like number 2 in our homework that we were doing. If I look at this problem, it says Miranda's car travels 40 miles on 1 3/8 gallon of gas. So 40 miles gives her 1 3/8 gallons of gas. She wants to travel 80 miles. How many gallons of a gas will her car use? So again, we know that 40 miles will give you, or will take 1 3/8 gallons. So we want to know how many gallons 80 miles will take. So what we need to figure out is how many groups of 40 miles do we have in 80 miles? Okay, some people are going to want to do 80 times 1 3/8. That's not the case. It's not 1 3/8 gallons for every 1 mile. It's 1 3/8 gallons for every 40 miles. So how many groups of 40 miles does it take to get to 80? That is 2. So if it's 2 groups to get to 80, I need 2 groups of 1 3/8. So I am going to multiply 1 3/8 times 2. So again, it has to be an A over B form. So 8 times 1 is 8, plus 3 is 11 over 8, times 2 over 1. I know that I can simplify here. 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. I cannot simplify 11 and 1. I cannot simplify 11 and 4, and I cannot simplify 1 and 1. So now I can multiply across. 11 times 1 is 11, and 4 times 1 is 4. So I have 11 fourths. Now we know that we don't leave improper fractions as our answer. So we're asking ourselves, and this is one we can do in our heads, I think, how many times does 4 go into 11? It goes in 2 whole times, that is 8. With how many left over? 3 out of 4. If you want to see that with long division, I'll do it right over here. I have 11 divided by 4. 4 goes into 11 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract, I get 3. So my whole number is 2. I'm going to put that over here. I have 3 left over. I'm going to put that in my numerator. And I'm dividing by 4. 2 3/4 gallons you will need to go 80 miles. All right. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is asking you, it says, what is the area of a workshop that is 4 yards wide and 5 2/3 yards long? 4 yards wide, 5 2/3 yards long. Okay. We know that area of a rectangle is length times width. So I am going to do 5 2/3 times 4. I know that I need to change those to improper fractions. 3 times 5 is 15, plus 2 is 17 thirds, times 4 over 1. I cannot simplify 3 and 4. I cannot simplify 17 and 1. I cannot simplify 17 and 3. I cannot simplify 4 and 1. So I can just multiply across. Well, I'm just going to tell you right now that 17 times 4 is 68. And 3 times 1 is 3. Now to find this, we have to change then this to a improper fraction, or it is an improper fraction, I'm sorry, to a mixed number. So I'm going to take 68 and divide by 3. 3 goes into 6 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract, I get 0. Even though this is 0, I still have another number to bring down. 3 goes into 8 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract, I get 2. And there are no other numbers after that. So when I look, I see it goes in 22 whole times. There is 2 left over, and you are dividing by 3. So it's 2 2/3, and it should be yards squared because it's area. If I look at my choices, A, B, C, and D, I do have 22 and 2/3 yards squared. So I know the answer is D. Okay, last problem. I hope you're showing all of the work you need to show for these. So when I look at number 4, it says Matt has 2/3 yards of fishing line, and he uses 3/8 of that line to make fishing knots. Okay, so he has 2/3 yard. He uses 3/8 of that to make the fishing line. It says to shade the model to show the amount of line Matt uses to make fishing nets. Okay, so first of all, this is how much he has. So this is the first thing we're going to have to show when we shade, okay? I have to shade 2/3. This is a complete yard. If you look, this one is divided into eighths, and this way is divided into thirds. So they're showing that he has 2/3. So you're going to shade in 2/3 using these third rows like this. So this shows 2/3 of the whole. This piece right here. All right. So now I have shaded 2/3. They want us to shade the amount that he uses for the fishing nets. So this is how much he has, okay, of the whole. He uses 3/8 of the line to make it. Now, look at what we have here. Here's our 2/3. We have to find 3/8 of that. So we look, this is divided into eighths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He uses 3/8 of that. So when I look at it, I'm going to shade 1, 2, 3 rows. So when I shade that, and I am shading it of the whole, but just so you can kind of see the difference in the images here. Okay. If you look at how this turned out, the answer is where it crosses over right here. We're looking at how many are shaded. Now you notice when I put the blue and the yellow together, it made green. I see that there are 6 green pieces because it was 6 of all of those. And then you have to give the answer out of the total number of equal size pieces in the whole. In this one, it is 3 by 8. So that is 24 total pieces. So that is shading the amount to show the how much he used for fishing knots. 6/24 of the fishing line. Okay, now I'm going to do something a little bit ahead here. If we were going to solve this mathematically, I want you to think about what it's saying. He uses 3/8 of the line. Okay, the line is 2/3 yard. So you are finding 3/8 of 2/3, which you know is the same as 3/8 times 2/3. If you multiply this across without simplifying, you see that you get 6/24. Okay? So when we look at the second part of this, it says, Kara says Matt uses 25/24 of, well, she says that that's what he's using, 25/24. Explain her error and tell how to use an equation to find the amount of line Matt uses. Now, we already found this part. How do we use an equation? We know we have to multiply. That's what this lesson is about, isn't it? So we knew that that was right. But what did she do wrong to get 25/24? Now, this is kind of tricky because it's not something that you can see automatically. But when I look at this and I see that they have 24 on the bottom in the denominator, it makes me think that maybe Kara thinks that he should add because we have a common denominator of 24. So let's check to see if that's what she did. I'm going to write it right here. 2/3 plus 3/8. We know that that is a common denominator of 24. 3 times 8 over 8 gives you 24. So we've got 16. 8 times 3 over 3 will give you 24. So that's 9/24. When I add them together, you get 25/24. So Kara's error was that she used addition instead of multiplication. So that was her error. She found a common denominator and added. And then the question says how to explain her error and tell how to use an equation to find the amount of line that Matt uses. So what you would then do is describe that Matt should have used multiplication and multiplied across instead of finding a common denominator. Okay? So feel free to keep this out when you take your standards mastery. Good luck and take your time. Make sure you write your work down on paper. All right, good luck.